Okay, recording is started and I will start the roll call. Chair Kalipi will be joining us a little bit later. Vice Chair Miyashiro.
Present. No one's in the room with me.
Chair Jones.
No, I can't.
Present at NELHA.
Did I say chair? Director Jones. Okay, Director Sirmos. Director Sirmos, could you please let us know if you're there with anybody else?
Here, nobody else.
Thank you. Director Suji.
Here with no one else in the room.
Director Hilton.
Yes, here by myself.
Director Bossert.
Here, no one else in the room.
Director Kim.
I'm here by myself.
Director Wicker.
Here, alone.
Okay, that's it for the board. Vice Chair. We do have quite a large variety of folks who are in this room, so perhaps we'll start on this room and then go to the Zoom. So Laurence Bombardier, we'll start with staff.
Augustine Edge, NELHA.
Across from me.
Alex Leonard, NELHA staff.
Keith Olson, NELHA staff.
Thank you. And we'll start and go around the room. So.
Gerald Hessinger, Indo-Pacific Sea Farms.
Jamie Masukawa, Ship Improvement Systems. Don McQuarrie, Kona Butterfish Company, Kona Sablefish Company.
Rocky Polito, Kona Sablefish Company.
Hiroshi Arai, Kona Sablefish Company.
Gavin Key, Oceanera.
Neil Sims, Oceanera.
That is everybody in, oh, I'm so sorry. How could I forget?
Terry Searles, HNEI, here to make a presentation later in the meeting.
Thank you. We also have quite a few people online. Perhaps start with the NELHA staff and then we'll catch everybody else. On my screen, Brian Babbitt, you're the first one. Could you please start?
Ryan Babbitt, NELHA staff. I'm here by myself.
Pam?
This is Pam. I'm here in the lab by myself, NELHA staff.
Ray?
Hi, this is Ray. I'm with NELHA staff. I'm by myself.
Jennifer? We may actually, people may have problems with the audio. So Sherry and Jennifer, I think Sherry might be the only one with the audio working.
Actually, it's not working.
We can hear you, Sherry.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sherry Ortiz, NELHA. I'm by myself.
Thank you. Other folks online, John Cole, I think I saw him at some point. Yes.
Yeah, I'm here and by myself.
And going down the line, Jim Parsons.
Hi, Jim Parsons, and my dog is in the room, but she's good at not taking notes.
And I think one last person I'm seeing, Tom Fee.
Good morning, Tom Fee, master planning contractor.
Thank you.
Also have a dog in the room.
I think that covers everybody. Have I missed anybody?
Yes, Doug Adams, I believe I'm a director, last time I checked, at least for the next 2 weeks. And
My
I'm alone
apologies.
again, naturally.
My apologies. All right.
Laurence.
Proceed.
So Joan.
Laurence.
Please go ahead.
This is Joan Salwin with Blue Ocean Barns.
And I see Wayne Murphy as well, bright and early.
Hi there, Wayne Murphy, and there's no dog in the room.
This is Rob Pettit with Oceanera, no dogs, no people.
Okay. And Chun Chang might be one I've also missed.
Yeah, DHL.
DHHL.
Yes.
No camera at
Yeah,
this time.
right.
Okay, that's it this time, I hope.
Okay, thanks everyone for attending. We'll open it, or the next agenda item on the list is the approval of the October 15th NELHA Board of Director meeting minutes. The minutes have been circulated, I believe, last Friday, November 15th, and is in the board packet. Do I open this up for questions or straight to approval? I think this is a straight to approval, right? Or open to discussion. Oh, you know what, sorry, it's been a while. At this point, is there any discussion on the October 15th meeting minutes? Okay, is there any discussion now from the public on the meeting minutes? Hearing and seeing none, are there any objections to approving the October 15th meeting minutes?
Vice Chair, I think you might need a motion to approve first and a second.
It's been a while, once again. May I have a motion to approve the minutes?
Motion.
Thank you, Director Wicker. May I have a second?
I'll second.
Director Hilton is who I heard first.
Thank you. There's been a motion and a second. Are there any objections to accepting the minutes? Hearing and seeing none, the minutes have been approved. Next item on the agenda is public testimony. At this time, is there anyone from the public that wishes to address the board?
Nobody from our end.
I don't see any hands online either. Okay, hearing and seeing no other request for public testimony. The next item on the agenda is old business, the report from the PIG. I'm sorry, Lawrence, are we doing this now or are we gonna push this to later in the agenda?
We can do it either way. I don't think it would necessarily take long unless there's a desire to go into executive session. So up to you.
I think I believe this would probably be more appropriate in executive session, but I do understand that there's quite a bit of logistics. And I would probably defer this for chair as well.
So some board members may need to leave early. I do know of at least one who needs to leave at 11. On the logistics side, we are set up on our end. We've grouped everybody that is not a board member, and we could quickly send them to the waiting room and retrieve them once we're done. So again, it could go either.
Okay, with that understanding, let's do item 4A, old business report from the permitted interactive group for the hiring of the NELHA executive director. May I have a motion to go into executive session?
Motion.
I'm sorry, Vice Chair, there is a public.
Discussion first?
Yes, there's a public summary.
Discussion first.
Yes.
Okay, before we vote or open up for comments, we will have a presentation on the agenda item.
Okay, so again, this is a public portion. The permitted interactive group was constituted on September 3rd and was tasked with presenting the 3 top candidates to the full board. And so this is a report of that permitted interaction group. There's no discussion or decision-making that is allowed, sunshine rules. But the hope is that we would have a special meeting in a couple of weeks on December 3rd. At that time, we would present the 3 candidates to the board in person in an executive session to maintain privacy. And the full board would have the opportunity to pose questions and get answers and see the people in person or at least in video. The PIG did receive 36 resumes after posting for a month. The PIG interviewed 5 in person And there are three top candidates, the resumes, names, and personal statements of which have been provided in the confidential section of the board packet. The questions that were asked of the candidates are also in that board packet. There may not necessarily be much more information to be provided from the PIG other than those three items. But if the PIG wants to go into confidential executive session, we can do it. But I want to remind everybody that no discussion would be allowed and no decision making. Thank you, Vice Chair.
Thank you. Before we call for the motion to enter into executive session, is there any discussion or comments from the board? Okay, any discussion or comments from the public?
I'm sorry, Sid, this is John. I just wanted to say, like Lawrence is emphasizing, on the board meeting where the PIG reports out, the board isn't supposed to deliberate at all or make any decisions. So I'm not sure what might be brought up at executive session, that would be outside of those things that would need, the executive session for the privacy of the candidates.
Okay. So is this, I'm going to assume it is enough that this action item, so do we need a motion to accept the report, or is it just informational circulated in the board packet?
The information is in the packet, but you can also accept the board as a whole if you want to take a vote on that. And then, yeah, the discussion will come at the next meeting or, deliver any decisions.
Okay. Hearing advice and guidance from Deputy AG Cole, is there any discussion or comment to accept the PIG report at this time from the board? Director Hilton?
Yeah, I would just say perhaps the motion at this juncture ought to be to accept delivery of the report rather than to accept it if there's going to be discussion at a subsequent meeting. So small distinction, but that's what I would recommend.
And my understanding at this point is with the delivery of the PIG report, the PIG is also disbanded. Okay, perfect. We would be looking, based on that, we would be looking for the motion of the delivery of the PIG report as the motion. Any other comments or discussion from the board? Okay, any discussion or comments from the public? Okay, hearing and seeing none, may I call for a motion to accept the delivery of the PIG report?
So moved.
Thank you. May I have a second?
Second, Russell.
Thank you. Are there any objections? Hearing and seeing none, the delivery of the PIG report has been approved. Next on the agenda is new business. Approval and decision making for Kona Limu and the 2-acre seaweed project. Do we have a presentation at this moment?
Yes, we do, Vice Chair. So this is an approval to lease 2 acres from the old Forever Oceans, or for those of you who are here longer, WEA, West Hawaii Explorations site. The proposal is to lease that to Kona Limu Company, which is currently DBA, I think still of Ocean Era, but would probably be an entity at eventually once a lease is approved, or if the lease is approved. The goal is to grow some seaweed for the local market initially, but eventually for the mainland and possibly elsewhere. This is a short-term project. It's a 5-year project. We initially worked on this in April. It was going to be a sublet for Forever Oceans. But then Forever Oceans left the park, and so this was put on hold. So we did a lot of upfront work, including the Research Advisory Committee had reviewed this proposal and provided a summary for the project. We see the staff sees very few risks. It's an experienced team. Neil Sims, who will be giving a presentation, short presentation shortly to give you an idea of the project. There is market demand. They were recently at the 50th anniversary and I think provided 500 samples. So it's was a very popular item there. Very little capital relatively is needed, and much of the technical work has been done already. So it's really a matter of scaling up. And they're doing what this park had always planned to have happen is start in the research campus, expand to a somewhat larger commercial enterprise, and eventually get to a 30-year sublease if this is successful. There are no biosecurity issues, no archaeological features. Neil has been working with Kua Aina Ulu Awamu, I think, with some folks there. We do understand there is sensitivity to use of or commercialization of native species. But that said, companies like Royal Hawaiian Sea Farms have been selling limu for decades. So, this type of project addresses food security, but also the cultural aspect as well. They would be using a boilerplate lease. This has been reviewed already by our attorney. And has been included in your packet. Also, Ocean Era is in good standing. And I think that's just a quick summary. There's a lot more in the way of detail in the packet. But for now, I think I'll hand this over to Neil, who would do a much better job than I presenting what he's about to do.
Thank you, Lawrence. I'd also just like to introduce Gavin Gee, our COO, is here, and Rob Pettit, our venture partner and financial analyst, is with us virtually from an island off France. I just want to give a brief overview here of the project. There's more detailed information in the board package. That's not coming up.
Double click.
I need to double click.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Yeah, you could try it from mine as well. You want to do a check or?
Yeah.
Otherwise you can, I have a copy on mine as well.
Double click, it starts to go through the deck.
There you go. We can go off of my Neil, if that's okay. Do you want to? Would you like to sit here and?
Yeah, I'll just hand you your.
I'm sorry.
So I want to just give a bit of background on Ocean Era and how this pertains to the work that we do. I'd originally started working here at NELHA in 1990 with a pearl oyster company. And in 1992, myself and my co-founder Dale Sava set up Black Pearls Inc., which then started to focus on the offshore potential that became Kona Blue Water Farms, which is now Blue Ocean Mariculture. We became Kampachi Farms LLC, which spun off Forever Oceans. And then we became Ocean Era Inc. And now we are looking to spin off Kona Limu Co. I hope that makes it all clear for everybody. The plan here is to look at tank-based grow out of native limu for the human food market, primarily looking at food service, but also retail. We've done some initial market trials here in Hawaii. The results are very encouraging. We've done some outreach to the continental US, and we're excited about the potential that that represents as well. We have 3 species that we're currently selling commercially. The sea grapes are the real standout. That's known as umibudo in Japan. The red ocean kale or halaminia is not farmed commercially anywhere else to our knowledge. And then we're also farming sea lettuce or the green alba. Most of this work up until now has been supported by the US Department of Energy. They're eager to see the potential applications of macroalgae as a biofuel. And so that would really need to be at scale. And so we are still planning to pursue offshore culture trials here about end of Q1 or Q2 next year. There'll be an offshore array deployed out here to test that. But as we've been working with the macroalgae from the land-based trials, we've been able to validate really strong market demand. Thanks very much to Dick Jones and Chef Vitali from Blue Ocean Mariculture that their team has been a great help in making those initial introductions to chefs, and we've been really impressed with the response from folk. We've got a business model that shows we have a pathway to profitability. We have to get to scale to get to profitability. We'll probably need outside investment for that, but there's a lot of impact investor and foundation interest in the macroalgae space. Even if we are successful with the offshore array, we still think that there is value in land-based operations because we would be able to optimize for many of the other higher value products from macroalgae, biostimulants or fertilizer, agriculture stimulants or cosmetics would be much better in a land-based system where we could control the parameters and optimize the content of those high value products. The site that we're looking at has the advantage of being low elevation and flat. It's already graded. And so we'd be able to start by installing tanks there fairly rapidly. And this is the build out of the site. It's essentially just wall to wall tanks. There would probably be 10 to 12 foot diameter HDPE, 2 to 3 foot in depth. There's a more detailed financial analysis in the package for the board there, but just in terms of broad arm waving, thanks very much to Rob Petit for the modelling work that's underpinned this. The way that we look at this is, as I said, we need to get to scale and ideally a minimum of 2 tonnes per year. But as we scale further, we're able to bring down the cost of production. And that's going to allow us to go from initially, we're going to be targeting higher end restaurants and we'll have some traction in retail, but eventually we would hope to be much more broadly distributed as we're able to bring down the cost of production and bring down the price. At the moment, we're about here because we're selling 5 kilos, sometimes 10 kilos a week. And so our cost of production is relatively high, but this is where we eventually want to be as we reach some scale in around somewhere between 50 and 100 tonnes per year, which we should be able to do off this site. That's all that I have, but I'm happy to take questions if the board has any.
Thank you. Are there any board questions at this stage? Director Hilton, I'm not sure if you wanted to add anything from the RAC point of view.
Well, I'll just make the comment that RAC did review this project, I want to say back in April. I believe we had 8 reviewers on it. The RAC report is actually in the packet, page 82. We encourage NELHA staff to continue to work through any of the outstanding questions at that time, and it appears that that has happened. The RAC impression of this project was favorable, and would, as suggested in that report, would favor moving forward at this point. So that's all I have to add.
So that would be the end of the presentation, Vice Chair.
Thank you. Just for clarification, this is agenda item 5A. So this is a request for approval for the expansion of a technical pilot scale operations from research campus to a 2-acre facility aiming to commercialize seaweed products. Is this a approval item associated with a lease, or is this attached to an existing lease?
So this would be a new lease, but it is a short-term sublease. Normally,
Okay.
short-term leases, 1 year or less, we do not go to the board to. But this was a lease that was a little bit longer than that. And so we're coming to the board for final approval. It is on space that was occupied by Forever Oceans as a single lot. And previous to that was West Hawaii Explorations Academy. We would partition out, so the map, and I should have shown my screen too. The map provided, oops. So the map that you saw that was provided by Neil Sims basically fits into the red spot with, so it's the full 6-acre would be partitioned off into this 2-acre project, and additional projects would come into the area that's closer to Makako Bay Drive. That area also has a building and a shed. But the 2 acres that Kona Lima would be occupying is on the Makai side, on land that is graded and fenced.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the presentation, and thank you for everyone's work in putting together the presentation. As always, we appreciate everyone's contribution. Before we call for a motion, we'd like to open up the floor to the board for any discussion and comments.
Thank you. This is Doug Adams. A couple things I was noting in the RAC report, which was very detailed, and really appreciate that. I just note the concern, or at least the notation about electrical use and the potential in terms of the expense associated with that, and then also the effluent water issue about where it's going to be discharged. And as the RAC notes, NELHA will need to be especially vigilant. I think that's probably goes without saying, but of course, being from government, I'm saying it. So the other thing I would ask Mr. Sims is, I didn't notice it in the presentation, and of course, this is a short-term lease, so within 5 years doesn't necessarily help. But he did show the marginal, cost going down per LIMU, and I'm just wondering about the opportunities for workforce expansion here as a result of potential increase in the LIMU production.
Yes, so a large part of the cost of production is going to be labor. Here it's probably just the harvesting and packing and restocking of the tanks. We would hopefully be able to be hiring that labor locally. I think Oceania at the moment, we have a staff of 12, and I believe 7 of those are Hilo graduates. So that's, we do like to be able to use local workforce where available. Does that answer your question, Director Adams?
Yeah, I appreciate you having considered it, and anytime we have something that we're looking at, I'm hoping we're also taking a look at what the workforce opportunities are on the island. Thanks.
Is there anything else from the board? Is there any discussion, comments from the public? Okay, hearing and seeing no more calls for discussion, may I have an approval to accept, or an approval for the short-term sublease for Konalimu?
A motion, Chair, Vice Chair.
I'm sorry. May I call for a motion? A motion for the approval of the Konalimu short-term sublease.
So move.
Thank you. Thank you. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you.
Second.
Are there any objections? Are there any objections to for the approval of the short-term lease for Konalimu? Hearing and seeing none, the short-term sublease for Konalimu has been approved. Next item on the agenda is the approval and decision making. Oh,
I'm sorry, who was second on this last motion? Okay, thank you, Director Adams. Thank you.
Thank you all.
thank you, Neil. As always, great seeing you. Okay, next on the agenda is the approval and decision making for the assignment of a portion of sublease K32 from Shrimp Improvement Systems Hawaii to Jamestown Point LLC. Do we have a presentation on this as well?
Yes, we do. Okay, this agenda item, and I've put up on the screen, shared all the locations for Shrimp Improvement Systems, so it's a little complicated. They actually have 3 locations at the moment. Those locations are shown in red. So on the left-hand side, the red dotted and dashed line is what they call the north facility. It's the old High Health Aquaculture facility that Jim Wyban ran. On the right-hand side are the other 2 locations that Shrimp Improvement currently occupies. So this particular agenda item is to assign a portion of the SIS sublease K32 from SIS to Jamestown Point Whitney Venture, Jamestown for short. The current existing lease for Jamestown, K27, I believe, is in yellow on the image that's on the left-hand side. So you can see that these 2 are neighbors. The red space that would be assigned is approximately 2.27 acres. And this is part of an asset sale agreement between SIS and Jamestown. The purpose for that, or the use for that space, would be to produce microalgae to service feed for their increasing shellfish production. Initially, that would take place in the red area that's immediately adjacent to Jamestown and immediately adjacent to Makako Bay Drive. So I've got my mouse on there so you can see it. The other space, although they're purchasing the assets, might get used or probably will get used at a later time. So looking at the impact from the cultural practices side, Jamestown is wholly owned by the S'Klallam tribe from Washington. So they look at everything they do is, 7 future generations in mind. And so from that perspective, they're aligned with Native Hawaiian values. This is land that has been previously disturbed. There's no archaeological and no other issues on that side. They've been very active in outreach. They basically spearheaded a pretty impressive shellfish display at the 50th. There are really no new changes from their existing uses and their existing business plan. That said, we did ask for an update since it has been a little while since the Jamestown business plan had been submitted to the board. And that has been included in your board packet. We will also have a short presentation from Don McQuarrie as soon as I'm done here. Probably the biggest issue for this particular group is the water quality issues. Jamestown has been part of the larval group and from the beginning, so they're well aware of all water quality issues. They have had some runs that have been successful this year and some that have not, or perhaps less so. I don't believe they've had any runs since the summer. I will also add that they have other locations in Washington State, and this is apparently not uncommon for hatcheries to have locations sort of to hedge the bets and have locations in different areas on the mainland and here, as they pretty much all experience issues at some point. There's a draft assignment agreement that was communicated and provided to us, and we did the calculation. There would be no premium due to DLNR. And sort of on an aside note on this subject is that in 2006, DLNR waived the need for consent to sublease. But in our subleases, we still have the need to get DLNR consent for assignment or mortgages. We're currently working with DLNR staff to look at this. We'll be working with our AG as well to see if this is something that can be removed. There are long delays for us getting those consents, and that's a little bit of a issue for folks when there's an assignment. This might involve a presentation to DLNR, so we'll be working on that. The draft documents that were in your board packet, they've had a first pass review, but there are quite a few attorneys involved, both on SIS, Jamestown, and NELHA, of course, the state side. And so we do have a few minor language tweaks to make, none of which I believe is substantial at this point. So we are asking for we are recommending, staff is recommending to approve this assignment of this 2.27 piece of land to basically transfer from SIS to Jamestown. I think I will now yield the floor to Don McQuarrie, and maybe we'll do it on my computer since the other one seems to be giving some trouble.
So I'll be talking about the Blue Ocean Barns property, right?
Yeah, Laurence, it's Jim that needs to present this.
I'm sorry, Jim.
Hey, Jim,
okay.
sorry.
A lot going on. Yes, I am so sorry.
That's okay.
The reason I'm thinking Don McQuarrie was the original person who started the land that Jamestown is currently on. So
Right.
draft that Neil presented, we could have had one for this one as well. But my apologies. Jim, I guess, could you share your screen? Because I don't think I have your presentation on this side.
Yeah, just in case, I just sent it to you. But let me see if I can pull one up here.
And while he's doing that, I will add, there was no RAC review on this one because this is basically the same business plan and the same use that Jamestown has been doing since for the last decade or so.
Okay, is it coming through?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, very good. So Laurence asked me to give you just a little update of who we are and what we're doing and why we want to expand in Kona. And the Jamestown Seafood also is doing business from, it's Jamestown Point Whitney Venture is the legal name, so you may run across that one. And we are wholly owned enterprise of the Jamestown Sklallam tribe. And I'll go a little more into that. If you look at the traditional Sklallam village sites, we're all on the northwest corner of Washington State along the northern tip of the Olympic Peninsula. And that is still the traditional home of the Jamestown Sklallam tribe. There are 3 Sklallam tribes, the Elwha, which is a little bit east of us, and then the Port Gamble tribe. But all very much depended on seafood for their livelihood, and actually their entire culture revolved around seafood. And so there was a saying that when the tide was out, the table is set. And you can see even back from the turn of the century, the Sklallam people, this is in Squim Bay, which is right near where the tribal center is today. And there was a lot of harvest going on at low tide, and it was very important for sustenance and for trading with other tribes. So today, if you look at the tribal council, in particular our tribal chairman, and what the values are, very strong stewards of the environment. Jamestown works hard to maintain environmental goals and protect the ecosystems of the homelands, but also to continue to gather treaty resources that fund programs and services for the tribal citizens. And aquaculture is becoming a very important part for the economic sovereignty of the tribe. Allows us to utilize best practices while continuing growing and gathering marine-based resources. So if you look today at what that same set of tidelands looks like, we have a lot of people out gathering shellfish, primarily oysters. You can see in the foreground are tubes that we use for initially planting geoduck clams, but then behind it all the way across the pan of the tidelands there are oyster beds. And all of those oysters actually get their start in Kona, and Kona is an extremely important part for us. We had some problems trying to get larval oyster survival in our Washington hatchery sites that we operate. And so by starting the larval development and growth to initial setting on shell, then we can ship them to Washington and they survive much better. Oysters are our main product. And the seed production actually has expanded to the point where it's allowed us to also sell oyster seed to other tribal entities. And there's a high demand that we can barely meet. And also we do geoduck within Washington State. No geoduck clams are produced in Kona or started there. And we still, just for nostalgic purposes, we still have a sablefish project going on here that we do in cooperation with NOAA Fisheries at their Manchester site and with University of Washington and Washington Sea Grant. So as you know, everything starts really small in an oyster hatchery. And as a recovering fish producer, this was really foreign to me. You know, I had to learn to trust Nate and our hatchery guys to when they told me that, you know, we've got 3 million in here, I couldn't see anything. So, and then what we feed those oysters is even smaller. So that's really where Kona comes in. We have a large portion of our current properties dedicated to the production of microalgae, and with the adjacent tanks in the lease portion that Laurence described to you, that gives us a real opportunity to expand our microalgae production. It's an important part of what we do. We've been asked by several tribes whether or not we can also produce manila clams. They eat a tremendous amount of algae as well. So we've increased the number of oyster seed that are going out of our Kona facility up to over 30 to 100 million seed per year, and that number keeps growing, and we've been asked to produce similar numbers of manila clams, which we could not do without increasing our algae production. So happy to answer any questions. Laurence asked me to keep it brief. I could talk all day about this stuff, but anyway, happy to answer any questions you guys might have.
Thank you, Jim. And I think the only thing that I may have missed, as far as the property itself, on the far end, we are aware of some waste, how would I call it? Discharge, the slowing down of the waste discharge issues that SIS had run into in the past. Some of that had been addressed, but for large volumes, there may be an issue in the future. But I want you to know that Jamestown is fully aware of those issues and that they would work with NELHA to make sure that this is addressed in the future.
Absolutely. Yeah, we don't expect most of what we produce on that site will actually be discharged through our larval shellfish that take much of what's in that out before it's actually discharged on the current property.
So I see that Chair Kalipi has joined us. And so I'm not sure if you're taking over, but either way, this is the end of this particular presentation.
Thank you, everyone, and my apologies for being late. And thank you to Vice Chair Miyashiro for handling the meeting and the agenda to date. Are we at the point where we would be making a motion to approve or consider making a motion to consider?
Correct.
Okay. Is there a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Is there any discussion or questions? Okay, hearing none. Are there any objections to approving the motion to approve the sublease? Okay, hearing none, the motion is approved. Thank you. Let's move to the next item on the agenda. Which is the approval and decision-making. Oh, wait, no, was that Sablefish?
So that was 5B. So we're now on 5C, which is the Sablefish.
Okay, so Laurence, I'm going to turn it back over to you to present, please.
Okay, sounds good. So this agenda item, and I will share my screen again with location. So this agenda item is for approval and decision-making for the assignment of the entire sublease K40 from Blue Ocean Barns to Kona Sablefish Company. So a little bit of background on Blue Ocean Barns. They had about 14 acres for a commercial and R&D project. So 10 acres for commercial, 4 acres for the R&D. Earlier in the year, they informed us they would be moving to Mexico and had removed the 10-acre parcel from their lease. So the current lease actually just has the 4-acre parcel, which was meant to be an R&D facility. They were then subsequently informed us that they would also be moving the R&D facility out. So they're liquidating many of their assets on that parcel and have been working with Kona Sablefish as far as a sale, an asset sale agreement which has been presented to us. Kona sablefish, on the other hand, is a project that I think you've seen multiple times come to the board. They received an approval in concept. And then more recently, late 2023, they came to the board again to ask for an extension, so that to give them a little bit more time to raise funds. So this is a project that has been presented to the board. I did ask Dawn, get it right this time, to present and give a summary, as we have had a little bit of a turnover on our board members. So he will do that a little bit later. But this project has been pre-vetted. The solution actually for them to take over this 4-acre from Blue Ocean Barns is actually a great solution from the perspective of less funds will be needed. The facility is already built out, ready to go. So from a timing perspective, this is going to be great for them. Also, it is a facility that used to produce fish at some point. So there are a lot of reasons for it to make a lot of sense for them. The sablefish that they would be producing, also known as black cod or butterfish, is used and viewed very favorably in Hawaii. And this group believes that there's a strong market for it. And I believe they've made some inroads in creating that market. The RAC did review this, although not the latest incarnation, but the previous incarnations. And that summary was included in your board packet, along with a bunch of other details on this project. The biggest concern that staff had at some point was the ability to raise sufficient funds to make this a successful project. And they have provided a letter from SoftBank, who is one of the groups that will be investing and assisting them with obtaining investors. The principals are veterans. Don McQuarrie, I think I mentioned earlier, he first developed the facility that is now Jamestown. And Hiroshi Arai, who is also in the room, was a principal in Big Island, Abalone. So veterans at Host Park. There are no biosecurity issues. We have spoken to the neighbors, primarily SIS. In fact, I believe that they intend to work with SIS on some R&D and on bringing fingerlings into the facility. They are also fully aware of the water quality issue and the issues with larval raising. Again, this has come up to the board several times, so we want to make sure that any project that wants to operate here is fully aware and that everything has been disclosed on that front. Finally, I will add that there is a burial ground in the middle of that property. Previously, Blue Ocean Barns and the folks before that, King Ocean Farms, had to follow a burial treatment plan that had been developed in probably 15 years ago, something like that. And they're fully aware that that is something that they need to take care of and be respectful of that special portion on that property. So I think at this point, I'll maybe put up your presentation and we can take some questions and answers. I'm sorry, I need to open it up. Okay, thank you for waiting.
Thanks so much. Yes, my name is Don McQuarrie. I'm the president, CEO of Kona Sablefish Company, also known as Kona Butterfish Company. We've trademarked that name. I'd like to thank the board of directors for accommodating us. It's wonderful. Okay, so the first thing I'd like to say is we do have a permit from the Plant and Animal Quarantine Branch to import sablefish juveniles from our sister facility in British Columbia. So we have that side of the equation dealt with. And what we're planning is to target food sustainability in Hawaii. Our 500, 600 ton business plan is primarily targeted for Hawaii. That's our principal market. We've been producing, okay, so.
Presentation ready?
No. Okay. Anyway, a very, very short presentation here. So you've seen all of this stuff before, Neil's slide, but the thing that's most important to us is the quality of the water. And Laurence has referred to the fact that there could be problems with the larval stages, but all our juveniles will be imported from British Columbia. So we can skip that part. And in the future, if we do work with SIS to build a hatchery and other early rearing things, we have very sophisticated equipment to deal with any issues in that regard. So our site is, as Laurence mentioned, the former Blue Ocean Barn site, and I must admit, current still Blue Ocean Barn site. But our plan is to use the diagram that's with the arrow going down into the thing. That's our plan. So we have just tentatively developed 100 metric ton capacity starting next May, increasing it to a 300 metric ton production capacity starting in 2026, and increasing it to 600 metric ton production capacity starting in 2027. This first year is a pilot facility. We have a lot of scientific things that we want to try out. Temperature control, nanobubble generation, many different sophisticated kinds of things that will allow us to rear a lot of fish in this property. As been pointed out by Alex, that it's a lot of fish and a lot of fish poo. So I believe I've satisfied his question with how we are going to deal with the waste products. But, you know, there's paper exercises and paper exercises, and that's one of the reasons why we're doing it in stages. If we get to 300 tons and that looks like it, then we'll have to adjust. And one of the things that we've looked at is Jamie of SIS kindly showed us around their facility that Blue Ocean Barns was formerly subleasing, and it would work very well for future expansion for our operation. It's almost perfect for the hatchery and early rearing operation. And where the raceways are currently, we could put large 48-foot tanks on there. So we have no agreement with SIS at the current time, just a hope. But we will have the ability to put out the 600 tons that we anticipate. And we've factored in a preliminary sublease from SIS into our calculations. So the team that we've assembled is remarkable, I think. We have 2 engineers. We have Alan Wong, restaurateur. We have financial guys. We have Hiroshi and Rocky over here, Rocky Polito, who have been involved in the wild fish business for a long, long time. Hiroshi selling Big Island abalone products to all the fine restaurants and hotels in this area. So between our sales team, our finance people, and the engineers, they've built and operated several RAS facilities around the world, and including the one in British Columbia. Our chief engineer built the largest hatchery in the state of Alaska. So we're not unfamiliar with big projects. And finally, we have a remarkable association with SoftBank of Japan, their technological development group. And they have come to Kona. They have seen the sites. They have met with the NELHA staff. And they're with us to help develop artificial intelligence technologies to benefit the aquaculture industry. So this site is providing them a pilot as well for producing things that will benefit the industry, both biologically and economically. So anyway, I thank you for your time. I keep staring at myself up at the screen there rather than looking at the camera. But anyway, thank you very much. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Board members, are there any questions?
Okay, I can, yeah, thanks. Oh.
Okay, I'm not seeing any hands. Okay, with that being said then, could I please have a motion to approve the assignment of sublease K40?
I move.
Thank you, Vice Chair Miyashiro. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Director Adams. Is there any discussion on this item? Okay, is there any objection to the motion? Okay, hearing none, the motion is hereby approved. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, directors. That's awesome. Thank you very much.
Thank you from Blue Ocean Barns as well.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Never forget about Joan. She's been so helpful.
It's been really fun working with you and Hiroshi.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, the next item on the agenda is discussion and decision-making regarding NELHA CIP needs and the approval for the removal of the 24-inch shallow water Ka'u pipeline and a portion of the 18-inch deep water Ka'u pipeline. So Laurence?
Thank you, Chair. Okay, so this agenda item actually has 2 distinct sections. The first section is really in response to the request that was made at the last board meeting, which was what our NELHA CIP needs, both immediately and in the long term. And so the first section is going to be addressing that. The second section is going to be asking for approval to remove 24-inch shallow water KU pipeline and a portion of the 18-inch KU pipeline, because those present issues with respect to health and safety. So we'll do this in two sections. I'll present the first section, but this has been a team effort, really getting to some of these numbers that I'll be presenting. And Alex will present the second section for the immediate approval. So this is going to be very preliminary. So I want people to realize that. We've been working on this since the last board meeting. It's a preliminary summary of what the staff here believes our CIP needs for NELHA. It does not include replacement costs further down the line. Presumably that would be covered by appropriate seawater fees. What it does include is everything onshore, offshore, park buildings, even roads. Our roads, for example, haven't been resurfaced in 2 decades. So there are quite a few things that need to take place to put this, this facility into tip-top shape. So I'll be showing you an excerpt of the types of things that we looked at. So, you know, we looked at our ability to continue to deliver the services, which are primarily, you know, the seawater services, but also the facility, the ability for people to come and work here, and also to enjoy the park. Also estimated time to failure, we've looked at that. We've also looked at possible interactions. There may be some, in some cases, you need to do one thing before the other, or one thing might affect the other. There are about 60 items, maybe a little bit more, but around on the order of magnitude of 60 items, ranging from maybe the $100,000 level to, I think the largest one might be 19 million, but that's looking further ahead, 10 years down the line. We've sorted this by category. So the next slides, I'll be showing you a summary with the different categories so you can kind of see where the big ticket items are. And it will also include the 1.9 reimbursable bond that Keith presented 2 board meetings ago. He described what the plan was for the 1.9 million. It does include that. And finally, it's going to be prioritized by what we feel ought to be done immediately, followed by what probably should be done 1 to 2 years from now. Then the next step would be 3 to 5 years, and then there's a 10-year horizon and beyond. We're trying to produce something comprehensive here so that we're not just saying, oh, for example, we have seawater quality for those companies that are doing larval production that need to be addressed. We wanted something comprehensive so that those maintenance issues or system improvement issues can be looked broadly in the context of all of the things that need to take place. One point I have to emphasize again is that it is going to be critical that we have sufficient people allocated to go along with those funds in order to do the work. So with that said, this is an excerpt only. I didn't want to put the whole 5 pages because you can really get into the weeds here. There's a lot here. Again, work in progress, but this is the type of document that we put together. The samples here are, the NELHA intake pipelines, color-coded. Red is what ought to be addressed sooner rather than later, down to 1, which definitely needs to be addressed. We have some zeros, like I mentioned earlier, and those have to do with new roads, an innovation center expansion, the beach park, Hale Vavaloli, which is basically a gift to the community, And then, landscape improvements, those types of things. So we do go into a bit of detail. But you can see we have water quality recommendations here. Those all stemmed from the Jim Wyban set of recommendations from his report. And, for those, you're looking at, close to 3 million. That amount is actually small compared to all the rest. So in summary, I have 2 tables up on this screen. On the left-hand side is sort of the entire thing. And I don't see anyone's faces on the screen, so I can't tell if you're all, what's going on. But if you look at absolutely everything, you're looking at $67 million. But that is absolutely everything, including the new roads, including the $20 million innovation center that would need to get built if we are going to expand in that direction. But if you look at the total priority 1 to 5, which is what I would consider deferred maintenance, you're looking at 27 million approximately. The priority 0, that's that 40 million with the new buildings and new roads, et cetera. So what has to do with priority 1 and 5 deferred maintenance, and 5, by the way, is highest priority. So on the right-hand side, those are the things we feel ought to be done immediately. Priority 4, 1 to 2 years from now, which means that we have about, fiscal year 26 is when it would make sense to ask and line up the funding for about 4.5 million. But also line up for the next 2 to 5 years, because if something needs to happen in 5 years, then we should be lining up the funding and finding a source of funding right now. So really everything above the red line adds up to about 19 million. Those are the things that staff recommends we seriously look at. Now, some of it can come from special funds. And so in this pivot table, you're seeing rows that are either special fund, some of it is already funded. So the 1.9 million reimbursable bond that we already have, that's in there. So take out 2 million from the 19 million. I guess we only need to find 17 million. But the important part is going to be this future CIP, whether it's going to come from federal sources, from state sources. But this is what we feel should be looked at. Have I missed anything major, Alex? No. So this is going to bring me to the next part of this agenda item, and that is the very top on the right-hand side, the immediate action, the 250,000 that we are proposing to use our special funds. This was not budgeted, so it's not in our budget. Therefore, it will decrease our budget by a quarter, or it will decrease our special funds by a quarter. But this is to remove the pipelines that are offshore right now. It's not something we knew about in summer, since this is something that happened in summer. But now we have a number and we can move forward. So I will let Alex present that part. But I did want to give an opportunity for questions for what I've said thus far on this topic.
Board members, are there any questions? I'm sorry, you got to speak up because I can't see everybody.
I have a question. This is Russell.
Go ahead,
What
Russell.
Laurence just provided, this PowerPoint thing, is not what I received in the board packet. And the agenda item I have is simply a request for the removal of the 24-inch water KAU pipeline and the 18-inch deep KAU pipeline. So I'm not sure all this other items that she was talking about, is that appropriate for us to consider? And my question is, do we even have funding for even the item that is 5D on today's agenda, which is the pipe?
So my understanding is that presentation is coming up, but in direct response to the last board meeting that we had, we had a discussion where we asked the staff to take a look at the comprehensive needs moving forward. So that as specific immediate priorities such as the removal of the pipeline, which is item 5D on the agenda, are brought to our attention, we have a comprehensive understanding of everything that is moving forward as well. So what she presented was a precursor to that, to give context, and that's why it's preliminary. But it's in direct response to, I think, what I and Chair and Vice Chair Miyashiro asked following the three presentations on deferred maintenance that were presented to the board in the last 3 meetings. So it's not for action, it was more in response to that, and we will now be moving directly to the request as it pertains to the immediate funding on the pipeline.
And is the appropriation then awarded by the legislature, or is this just asking the board to ask the legislature for funding?
It's not an ask to the legislature, it's not an ask yet. It's to let us know what the team is assessing in terms of CIP needs, in direct response to questions that board members had in the last meeting.
Okay, but there might not be funding.
Correct.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Before we get into the next item, I know this is a request for the removal of, it seems like an emergency request. Has NELHA in the past, and I know this might have been under the old regime, but have we dipped into the special fund for maintenance requests in the past?
Whenever we don't have any other funds, we use special funds. So for example, when pipes go to the surface, yeah, all prior recoveries of pipelines, we have used special funds for that because there was no other option. And so in this case, there is no other immediate option. We did check with HAIMA to see if that would be an option, but there is no immediate option. So we do feel that it's imminent enough, and Alex would, maybe we should let Alex cover, make the case for using the special funds. But in answer to your question, Vice Chair, we have in the past used special funds when needed.
Okay. Has it gone down to this level? Because it was my understanding that we always kind of level set at a certain level of the special fund where I feel the board was comfortable. It sounds like we're going to chunk it down by a quarter. Has that happened in the past where we have taken it down by a quarter and then built it back up?
Yes. I would say we were at about 300,000 for a very long period of time, and then made a lot of inroads with additional revenue sources under Greg's leadership. And so we are now at about 950 million, something like that, which is where I think the board was comfortable. Yeah, we have before been in a similar situation.
Was it in the near term, like the last 10 years?
Yes.
I'm sorry, did you catch the question?
Yes, it was within the last 10 years.
Oh, yeah, yeah, most of it. I think you had counted 500,000 in the last, even 5 years, right? And as recently as the emergency recovery. So what we're asking for today, we already did a portion of this as an emergency procurement. And how much was that?
That was 20,000.
25,000, something like that.
But
okay, so this line.
The question was whether the special funds were down that low.
So this request is in line of how we've handled emergency requests in the past.
It is. So maybe, do you want to say a couple of words to give more specifics?
Sure. So at the last board meeting, I reported that back in May, we were notified that one of our pipelines was floating at the surface offshore of the Kau Pump Station, in relatively shallow, highly traveled waters, posing a risk to life and property, navigation. We responded immediately and removed 60 feet of pipeline from the ocean at that time, starting the following day. We then followed up on that to find out what had happened we commissioned an underwater video survey of the remaining pipeline. And we're informed by that survey that serious damage had occurred to both the NELHA 18-inch pipeline and the 24-inch surface pipeline at Kau, probably in a major storm event, somewhere in the middle of mid-May. As a result of that storm, about 200 feet of each of those pipelines has basically become detached from the sea floor. All the hardware holding them down has corroded to the point where it gave way under force, and leaving those two pipelines loose on the bottom, lightly weighted down by remaining metal hardware that is still attached to the pipes, pieces of the old hold down mechanisms. However, it's highly plausible that a future storm event will knock those pieces off, causing the pipelines to become positively buoyant and rise to the surface, and again become dangerous to shipping and boating in the area. So we immediately set about to formulate a plan to remediate that situation. There's no good way to anchor these things down to the sea floor quickly and cost effectively. The only real solution is to just take them out. Neither of these pipelines has been in use for a number of years. They were to be abandoned and removed from the ocean at some point in the future anyway. And so we strongly feel that is the best option at this point in time. Certainly, it will remove the hazard. So we, being cognizant of the fact that this falls outside, we felt this falls outside of the emergency procurement route, which we have used in the past to allow us to respond to floating pipeline dangers. This is not quite at that level of criticality, although it's close. But we consulted sister agencies and confirmed that because the pipeline, because the planned pipeline removal would fall under the requirements of Chapter 343, we sought DAR's input because of the population of marine corals and reef organisms that colonize those old existing pipelines. DAR responded that yes, indeed, they did want to be involved, that NELHA needs to obtain a special activities permit in order to conduct this work. And DAR have assisted us in formulating a scope of work for coral mitigation, removal of corals of a certain colony size and transplanting them nearby, as well as DAR also then have filed the permit application, the SAP permit application before the Board of Land and Natural Resources. And we're told that the board will be taking this up likely very early in December. We then went out to bid to remove these pipelines. Included in the scope of work is the complete removal of the 24-inch pipeline, including the intakes, which, although they are still anchored to the bottom, they're the only portion of the pipeline that is anchored to the bottom. We feel that it doesn't make any sense to leave them there. It'd be more work to leave them in place than to just simply take them up with the rest of the pipeline. The coral recovery work and preservation is included in the solicitation scope of work. And as for the 18-inch deep seawater pipeline, we're recommending right now that only 200, the loose section that is about 200 feet long, be removed at this time. Beyond that, starting at about a water depth of 70 feet, the existing hold down hardware is still in good enough shape to hold that pipe down for for some time to come. And rather than make the project more complicated and expensive now, we figured it was better to address the immediate hazard and deal with this, the remainder of the pipeline at a later date. As such, we're proposing to anchor that remainder down using a newly installed holdback assembly. Also included in the scope of work is environmental cleanup. There's a lot of junk on the bottom right now. Damaged hold down hardware that was broken during that storm event. All those pieces need to be picked up. That's included in the scope of work, as well as the required video documentation, so that we can demonstrate and verify what's the work that's been completed by the contractor. We went out on HIPRO on the procurement system for bids, received 3. Pacific Underwater Construction came in at just shy of $240,000. Sea Engineering offered $455,000, and American Marine Corporation $748,000.
I just checked the screen.
All 3 vendors appear to be compliant with the licensure and bidding requirements, including HCE. And we have prior experience working with all 3 of those contractors and have found them to be reliable and have no reason to exclude them for any past performance issues. And they all filed valid bid bonds, so basically we consider them all responsive in that respect. And so our understanding is that there's no reason to stop us from awarding to the lowest responsive bidder. Funding of the contract of this contract would come from NELHA special fund. And the reason that we come to you is because although normally this would be reviewed internally only and approved by a director, in the absence of such, we figured it was up to the board. We should put it up to the board for decision making, because it is, as you said, a very big hit on our special fund. So staff has a recommendation that the board approve this expense, which was not part of our fiscal year 25 budget. And they direct us to award bid to the lowest bidder, Pacific Underwater Construction, according to the terms and conditions of solicitation. And as soon as we receive the special activities permit from the Board of Land and Natural Resources, to issue a notice to proceed with the work.
Thank you, Alex. We do want to note that some directors have left, but I believe we still have quorum. We still have 7 directors left at this point.
Vice Chairman Shira, I think she's signing in again, so I just wanted to make sure she was online when we took the vote.